right, I think we're ready to start. Since it's the first session in this room, so we just tried to figure everything out here in terms of setup. Seems like everything is working, so thank you all so much for voting for the session, and most importantly for coming here today for this event in general, but also for my session means a lot. For today's session, I wanted to share with you, which I think was a really personal experience for me. Because as a product manager, when you start thinking about how to be a good product manager, so you always kind of think about all of those different features and functions and everything that you're actually being asked to do, especially when you start your journey. And then as you continue growing, somehow you still need to become more strategic, but somehow on the way people don't teach you what does it actually mean. At least like that has been an experience for myself, and I think it took me a while to realize what does it actually mean to be strategic, and when you put together some kind of proposal, how would that actually make any difference. So obviously we're going to have just 30 minutes today, so I'm not going to be able to give you all the answers, but I just wanted to give you a glimpse of how you could be thinking about product strategy and start maybe changing a little bit your mindset of what actually you need to be thinking about when somebody asks you for the product strategy. We will try to do the session today interactive, so have your phones ready because we will try to vote a little bit. Hopefully technology is going to work. I did my best, as you can see, 12 hours ago, which was somewhere midnight, setting everything up, so hopefully everything is going to work. Okay, so a little bit about me before we dive into all the details. Currently, I'm a chief product officer at a company called Spryker. We're a B2B digital commerce platform. I also have my own startup that actually also helps product managers to plan and kind of prioritize a lot of different initiatives that they have. That is something that I do kind of more for fun and on the side. Also mentor and advise a lot of aspiring product leaders as well as a lot of aspiring startups that are trying to figure something out. And most importantly, proudly for me, I'm Ukrainian who lives in the US for the last 10 years. So just wanted to mention that because I feel like it's important for me, obviously. All right, so with that, so let's start with thinking about what is product strategy. So the product strategy is more than just a roadmap. Sometimes when I actually in my mentoring work, somebody comes in to me and says, well, I want to be strategic and here's my product roadmap. And you look and it's like a bunch of different features, a lot of different initiatives or maybe themes or however people actually think about it. But then you ask them what kind of difference is it going to create? People don't really know the answer besides there's going to be this new feature that's supposed to make everything amazing. Some people also think that if you have, a company goal, that is your product strategy. But that is also not your product strategy because your company goals are giving you that North Star. But you need to understand how you're actually going to be changing one thing to another because product strategy is all about creating change. And you need to understand what kind of change you're actually trying to create. So for today, I'm going to try as much as I can to walk you through this exercise of where all of us are going to try to pretend that you just started as a head of product for the company that is called Jet Set Go. ChatGPT helped me come up with this wonderful name. Imagine that you started at this company. And you have all the faith in you because you went through interview and now your CEO or whoever is the leader says, okay, let's come up with a product strategy. You have your 90 days to do it. Off you go. So, I know the company obviously goes through challenges because you always need to understand where the company is. So revenue is not necessarily growing. I know competitors are doing something else. And you need to figure out what exactly are we going to be doing. So here, what I wanted to ask you guys to do is to actually take up your phones and go into Slido, and we'll see, hopefully the technology is going to work. So here, I wanted you to start thinking. So imagine, again, you started at this company, and you're being put together in a position where now you can come up with a product strategy. So what are going to be the first factors or the first things that you're going to start looking at when you have that most desired task in front of you? Like now, because all of us want to be strategic and want to own product strategy. So what exactly are you going to be doing? What are you going to be researching? I don't know, whatever comes to your mind. Perfect. So yeah, some people say that you're obviously going to look at competitors, demographics, market trends, innovations, enhancements, budget, pricing, value, economy, customer needs, differentiations, yeah, personas, stickiness. Perfect. Customer pain points. But like what we are seeing here, and I see that people are still typing, is that the topics that are coming up as kind of bigger and bolder are, you're going to look at competition, you're going to look at differentiation, market trends, market in general, customer research, customer pain points, unsolved problems in the market. And all of those are definitely great things to look at. So imagine that you have done all of that. So now you have kind of a lot of those different data points, and now you still have that task at hand to actually come up with a product strategy. So now kind of we will start thinking about what is actually you should be doing when you think about product strategy. And one of the common things that I see a lot of people doing as one of the biggest mistakes is that, obviously, as product managers, we're all being told that you need to think about the customer pain points. Because how many times have we actually read the books which says, build the products that customers love, which is true. But if you only listen to your customers, you're not going to have the right product strategy. That company, Jet Set Go, that was not necessarily doing well, if you ask the customers what they want and what their pain points are, is not necessarily going to magically start doing more. Because the customers who come to you are the customers who come to you. They have some kind of pain points, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you now crafted what exactly going to make the biggest difference. And what are the other things that you should be doing? And that's something that I typically, again, stress out in my job. Also, it was a big learning experience for me personally, is that you need to open up kind of your mind to a lot of other factors. And here I kind of wanted to try, I was trying to give you a view of what are those other factors that you should be looking at. So first of all, you need to understand who are your customers are. So obviously you have those personas, and we saw that some people mentioned personas. But you need to understand, obviously, kind of how much money do they have? Are those luxury travelers or are those casual travelers? That are they traveling for work? Are they traveling with family? Are they traveling by themselves? What kind of experience are they looking for? And kind of that's probably, I think, what we already covered. But what you also need to understand in your product strategy is what's happening around us. So how does economy looking like? If economy actually is not necessarily growing, it would be naive to expect that all of a sudden you will see a spike of travels because people are going to be now trying to be more conservative with the spend. That's pretty much what we're seeing right now. If, for example, you're trying to build this product, and again, we're talking about product strategy here. If you're building a product and kind of you're now in product thinking about going to lots of different other areas, but now there is kind of this new legislation that makes it really complicated for, let's say, Americans to enter United Kingdom. So that is something that you actually need to understand. You need to be watching all of those different legislations and all of those different regulations that come in order to understand whether there is going to be actually a market for that. You also need to understand kind of with technology and also your younger generations, kind of how would that experience look like? Because some people would actually maybe want to travel with AI augmented reality type of experiences because it's fun, and that's kind of where you can actually differentiate. So those are the type of experience that most of the time are being completely forgotten because we look at the customer, we look at their pain points, we're trying to look at what our competitors are doing, and then trying to go basically kind of follow the same steps and follow their lead. So kind of if you're thinking about, again, I already touched on some of those different factors, but what is really important to understand is kind of all of those other factors that most of the time are not being considered. So your political temperature, right? For example, now we see so many different geopolitical tensions that are happening around the world. It would be naive, for example, to focus on expanding your travels to any of the other parts of the world where there is a little bit of conflict going on. Or if you look at environmental cases, if there is, certain type of things that are happening which is not attractive to that audience that are ecologist conscious, you might also not necessarily have the great results. We already talked about legal aspects. You need to understand kind of your legal legislations. And again, here we picked up kind of that travel industry. I, for example, work in digital commerce industry, which is kind of allowing people to sell digitally across the world. And then you would find, for example, there is a kind of right to repair law in the US that has been passed 2 years ago. And I, for example, personally didn't know about it, but then we started seeing a huge spike in customers who sell digital, who sell electronic products and automotive products asking for digital commerce. And I was like, well, why is that? But apparently, because there is that law in place, it actually forces people to now start providing a lot of specifications and manuals to the products. So it's actually making it easier for them to sell it digitally than have that place where now there's going to be kind of that one place where you can find all of the manuals, all of the certifications and specifications all in one place. But if you don't really know about that law, if you don't understand kind of that is happening, and you have not thought 3 steps further, what does it mean for your industry? It's going to be great that customers figure it out for themselves, that you can help them. But if you were at the forefront of that and you knew the answer, maybe there's a marketing campaign, maybe there is something that you can actually put together in order to grow your product, in order to grow your company with that and have the answer ready. So then as you're going to be going through those different factors, I want you to think about how does that applicable to your industry. I know in healthcare, it's going to be some other legislations, in automotive, in digital commerce and travel, it's going to be completely different ones. But you need to be thinking about that as well. And obviously, kind of when you look at things like AI, kind of all of that is something that I feel like everybody's talking about. So you obviously need to be thinking about that as well, and thinking about how can you reimagine kind of that experience. But those other factors like political, environmental, legal, economical, and social need to be considered at the beginning, and thinking about what is going to be the experience that you actually want to create with that. So now, going to the next question that I have for you. So I gave you kind of a list of those different factors, and I wanted you to take a second and pick up your phones and vote for what are the factors that you actually never or rarely considered when you thought about product strategy. Yeah, for sure. But yeah, definitely in B2B, it's going to be a completely different answer, because I know selling to B2B is even more complicated than if you sell to B2C. But at the same time, kind of you also need to kind of understand, all of us as humans, we always operate in kind of that environment. All of the political, environmental, economical things impact us. And our buying desire to buy your product, because ultimately there's going to be a fact of buying your product is going to change depending on everything that's happening around us. And most of the time, again, I want to stress the point that most of the time we're so taught that we need to be thinking about the customer, which we do, but not in isolation. So because the customer, his ability to purchase, even if it's B2C or B2B, is going to be highly influenced by what kind of economy they're living in. I know your travel industry is going to be spiking way more. For example, obviously, it's an obvious example, but when we think about COVID, right, I know something has happened. It was not necessarily product strategy, but how can you pivot your travel industry experience even in that environment? So it's a B2C product, but at the same time, obviously, kind of that type of experience is really important. And kind of COVID is, I know, is it environmental or social, cultural? I don't know. Kind of, I think it's probably all of those things and economical at the same time. But it's really important for you guys to start thinking about how can you consider those type of experiences as well. So imagine that, if you were to consider all of those factors, ultimately what you need to understand is that in strategy, it's always about going from point A to point B. So strategy is not we would like to build a new feature function for the customer that now they would be able to rate my trips. Or, we want to have an AI agent that is going to be making it easier for the customer to go and buy the next trip. So it's not about that. because those are the feature functions that you need to have. But the strategy is all about, I know my company right now is at this moment where I know we are making that much sales, we have that much churn, we have that much revenue, and kind of this is the percentage of customers who come to us for the first time, and this is the number of people who are actually coming back to us for the repeated purchases. Let's say again, if we go with that example. Then you kind of need to understand is like, okay, from all of those different forces that we looked at, what are going to be the hypotheses that you're going to be making that is going to make that driving force, that is actually going to be making the change? So maybe you will say, okay, so the biggest thing we believe that we should be doing is actually changing how many times people come back to us for the repeated purchase. And we believe that right now we're at 10%. We want to increase it to 15%. And for that, we believe that there was an AI agent that is going to be helping us to do it automatically, then yes. If we believe that instead we actually should be expanding to different regions, then we need to understand which regions people might actually kind of more travel to, and then understand what is actually going to be like the likelihood of people traveling to this. Because if you now going back and kind of, for example, let's say, come up with a strategy where you have lots of travels to Israel, as an example, not even talking about my home country, obviously you're not going to see a lot of results from that. So kind of and then you need to understand what is that point B, and it typically kind of needs to be, again, formed in terms of the money and the financial results. It shouldn't be kind of this abstractive, we didn't have this feature, now we have it. We didn't have that experience, now we have it. Customers were not happy before, now they're going to be happy. All of that is not a strategy, because all of that are just kind of the fluff that you like talk about, and most of us actually using that terminology most of the time. So with kind of all of those different ideas that we talked about, and it's more philosophical than practical at the same, but I wanted you to go back to example that we came up with. So again, we're thinking about this Jet Set Go company. Obviously, we didn't have that much time to think about in what environment they're living and what is happening. But let's say, so now you as a product manager thought about different options of what can you do. So you have your point A, the revenue is not growing, you want to get to the point where you actually want to grow the revenue, and you're planning to grow it through your existing customers for the repeated purchases. Let's say you come back with those three ideas. You kind of want to come up with some tariff-neutral destinations. If we would imagine that tariffs actually have something to do with travel. Then also we see that prices are now spiking on everything. So maybe the feature that you're going to propose is this price lock-in. If you buy right now, your prices are not going to go up for any of that experience. And the company, you as a company, are going to be taking that responsibility. Or you actually doubling down on the people who are ecology like eco-conscious, and you want to focus on that. So I want you to think about what are going to be the strategies that you guys would vote for, considering those examples. And you probably would come up with something else, but I just kind of wanted to give you some ideas to think about. So the options that we have are like focus to the tariff-neutral destinations, or maybe kind of try to differentiate ourselves from the low-waste local economy travel platform, like to become that. Or we actually knowing that all of our customers are price sensitive right now because the world is going crazy with all of the price spikes. We want to somehow protect the prices.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
I'm just curious, so how are they going to be charged a tariff by going up to a destination? There's tariffs
No, but kind of again, I just wanted to come up with something like hypothetical. So like there is no tariffs for that yet. But again, if we're thinking, well, who knows? Yeah, because like, for example, now we even thought that like UK, for example, introduced like a fee for Americans to fly to the UK kind of, but again, like, this is hypothetical examples, but this is an example, like, let's say like if that happens and now it's like more complicated for Americans to go to the UK, maybe doubling down on the UK is not necessarily the right strategy. Even though UK historically has been a favorable destination for lots of people to travel, right? Same language, same kind of similar culture, that type of stuff. But So I think now we have about 48 people who voted for it. And what we're actually seeing right now, again, this is a hypothetical example based on us talking about this only for a little bit. But what we're seeing is that majority of you guys voted for launching a price protection booking model, which is not necessarily, again, a feature. Like, if you think about it, it's not necessarily a feature that you would come up with if you were just talking to the customer per se, right? Like, asking about their experience. Yes, it might come up, but ultimately what we're talking about is changing kind of your company has been in this one point where the revenue has been stalling. You have this macro environment that is changing rapidly, and now you actually want to allow customers, your customers, to feel a little bit more secure by introducing this booking model, which goes way beyond just your product functionality and kind of like lock in the price, because now you need to consider your legal, you need to consider a lot of other factors and how exactly you're going to be doing that. And what is really interesting here is that, again, because how I talked about some of those factors, I definitely like steered you towards choosing actually the price protection booking model, because a lot of examples that I gave you were around kind of like how the world is not predictable right now. But the most important part that I want you to take away from it is that you need to understand all of those macro environments so well, so then you are actually not being followed, like you're not following a lead of a customer or a couple of customers who tell you to do something because kind of that's how they feel, but you actually have a really good understanding of what's happening across all of those 6 different factors. So then you can decide based on the data what kind of strategic bets you're going to be making and how that point A versus point B is going to look like for your strategy. So, and with that, I just wanted to say that as a if you want to build a strategic mindset, which I feel like all of the product managers always want to have, you need to be thinking about external factors first. You need to understand, again, the macro environment and what you operate and in what macro environment your company operates first, and then kind of go into the product strategy. You need to be thinking about directional bets. Again, you're trying to change from A to B. You need to have more clarity over kind of focusing on a lot of features that you're going to be delivering. You might deliver just one thing that is going to be that price, like locking in the price, that might change everything for that company. And for your company, it might be something completely different. And once you have that, then you can actually think about the features and the functions that you might want to create for the customer. So next time when you're going to be asked for the product strategy, so what I want you to think about is definitely ask for the point A. So you need to have a really good understanding of where your company actually is and what's happening around. You typically can't figure it out for yourself, but you need to understand what are the company financials are, because a lot of people, again, don't start from that point, speaking from experience. You also need to understand what which external forces actually matter. You look at all of them, and then you decide which ones matter and which ones don't. You need to understand and align with your leadership, whoever that is going to be, on the point B, because sometimes, again, we're thinking about the features, and everybody's like, it's great to have those features, but that's not what is going to be making the difference. And then from there, you come up with those strategic bets. And I wanted to share with you some other resources. They are actually clickable links. I think you will get the presentation. If not, reach out to me. I'll send you the presentation. But those are the specific, the goods, bad. It's a book, but then there is a really amazing course. It's called Overnight Strategist, where this guy, I don't remember, Shreyas Doshi, I actually wrote it here. So he teaches an amazing course on how to think about strategy and goes way deeper into the principle that I talked to you about. And then there's also an amazing article on LinkedIn that you can even learn more from another author who actually writes on this topic. So, and with that, if you would like to have access to my presentation, reach out to me on LinkedIn or Instagram if that's easier. Just let me know that we connected through the product camp here, and I would love to send you this presentation. You'll also get the link to additional resources. And if we have some time, do we have some time for questions?
Yep.
So then I'm happy. 6 minutes for questions. So if there are any questions, happy to answer them. And thank you so much. Yeah.
So on the point B, where you're going to, the vision, and you put for customers and for the company, can you share your thoughts on the relationship between a customer focused vision, where you want, the change you want to see for customers versus the change you want to see for the company. And if you could also address how Simon Sinek's start with why type of vision fits in.
Yeah. So in the point B, what I specifically mean, why is not necessarily just the vision. So I feel like there needs to be like vision. The company vision obviously needs to be there, as well as you need to understand like what kind of experience are you trying to create. Like for this hypothetical company just at Go, let's say we need to understand who are we actually, like for whom are we transforming that travel experience, for luxury travelers, for busy executives, or for people who travel with their families, right? And kind of like what is going to be that change in the vision, and what are you actually trying to create. But sometimes, or most of the time actually, the product strategies and the company strategies are not grounded in reality of what the company is trying to create. So let's say if your goal is to grow that much revenue so then you can become profitable, you need to know that as a company, and you know to know it as a product strategist, because otherwise you might be capitalizing on certain features and functions that help your customer grow the NPS, but it's actually not going to be delivering that company goal that is important. And I hear so many people not. Like when people reach out to me and we sometimes chat about their challenges, I'm like, okay, so do you know where the company is going? I don't need to know it, but like, do you know it for yourself? And people don't. And if you don't know it, like, how would you come up with the strategy? So like, if your finance department actually is trying to grow the revenue and you're optimizing for the NPS of your existing customers, and kind of that, there might be a huge disconnect. Sometimes it's not, but like most of the time there is a huge one. So I'm not necessarily like answering your question directly, but I feel like you need to understand, obviously, like you need to have the vision of what is the change that you're trying to create, but you also need to be really specific about how that point B is going to look like, not in terms of the words, but also in terms of the numbers, because that sometimes is missing, and that creates such a huge disconnect for everybody in the company.
Are you just saying that strategy must have intentionality?
That's a nice way to put it. Like strategy needs to have intentionality, yes, and I think it does. It does need to have, again, like those financial aspects to it. The more you understand what kind of like KPIs you're actually trying to move the needle for, then you have your strategic bets, because you can say my revenue here is this, and again, revenue is an easier example, but there might be so many different other factors that you would be considering. And then you kind of like, okay, so I'm going to do X, I'm going to do this. And then that's kind of where I believe that there's going to be an uplift in, the churn prevention or the new ARR or whatever that might be. And that is something that, again, kind of most of the time we see like product initiatives and themes, and they're like, improve user experience, which is great, but like, how is it actually going to drive the strategy forward, and for whom, and how that is going to result in the user in the actual company results is not clear. Hopefully that answers the question.
No, just like you took a long way.
Sure.
Your note, clarity over velocity, resonated. Would be interested in like approaches that you found successful, like in your example, if the company's losing revenue, people are freaking out, they want like an urgent response. Be able to slow the response down to keep their own strategy first, even if people are like...
Yeah. I recently learned, and maybe that's actually familiar to you guys, I learned this principle called the ladder of inference, kind of where sometimes people operate kind of like, here's my conclusions and here's your conclusions, and then we all argue about like, I know whose conclusion is right. But most of the time, like when you go down to the, like on this ladder, there's like a shared data and data points that everybody needs to understand, because I know this one person might have like another subset of data here, you operate with another subset of data. So ultimately, like if we're talking about clarity over velocity, it's not about busy work and kind of shipping more features sometimes. It's actually getting clarity of the point A, where we are, point B, where we want to be, and making sure that we all look at the same factors and not just inside the company and not just copying and following our competition and only listening to the customers, but like broader, right? And then from there, kind of trying to understand what are going to be with the shared information, what are going to be the bets that we're going to be making. And there's obviously the whole art behind it of how to do it, but that's something that most of the time is not in our mind because we think about those abstract terms. So I think I had only 1 minute left. So with that, thank you all so much for your time. Hopefully that was interesting. If you want, again, reach out to me on any of those social media channels that I listed. And if you're interested in getting a copy of the presentation, just let me know and I would be happy to share that with you. And thank you so much.